Good day, everyone. My report is about the Treaty of Paris of 1898, focusing on Articles 14 to 17. This treaty is one of the most significant documents in world and Philippine history because it officially ended the Spanish-American War and served as the foundation for the final settlement between the United States and Spain. It marked the end of more than 300 years of Spanish colonial rule in the Philippines and symbolized the beginning of a new era under American control. Article 14 discusses Spain's right to establish consular offices in the territories that were ceded to the United States, such as the Philippines, Guam, and Puerto Rico. These consular offices functioned like small embassies. Their main purpose was to represent Spanish interests and protect Spanish citizens who were still living or doing business in those territories. Through these offices, Spain could continue to handle legal matters related to its people, settle commercial issues, and maintain limited diplomatic presence even after losing sovereignty. This official article shows that although Spain no longer had political power, it was still allowed to safeguard the welfare and rights of its nationals. Article 15 centers on trade and shipping relations between the United States and Spain. According to this article, for a period of 10 years, merchant vessels of both countries were to enjoy equal rights and privileges in the ports of the Philippines and other territories ceded to the United States. This meant that Spanish ships could still trade freely in those ports without discrimination. This arrangement was very important for economic stability because it helped maintain the flow of commerce and during the transition of power. It ensured that trade activities would not be disrupted and that both nations could benefit from fair and open competition. Article 16 focuses on the responsibilities of the United States in Cuba. It states that the United States would be responsible for protecting life and property only while it continued to occupy the island. Once the American occupation ended, all such responsibilities would also end. This clearly emphasized that the U.S. presence in Cuba was meant to be temporary and that Spain would no longer have any duties or obligations regarding the island. It also reflected the political principle that the U.S. was not claiming permanent sovereignty over Cuba because only taking charge during the transition to independence. Article 17 explains the legal process of making the treaty official. It requires that both Spain and the United States ratify the treaty and exchange official documents of ratification. This was the final step to make the agreement legally binding. Without ratification, the treaty would have no effect. Once both sides completed this process, the Treaty of Paris became the formal and legal end of the war. And finally, the conclusion records that the treaty was signed in Paris on December 10, 1898, ratified in 1899, and proclaimed by U.S. President William McKinley. Through this proclamation, the transfer of territories including the Philippines, Guam, and Puerto Rico became official. This marked the definite end of the Spanish-American War and the start of American sovereignty over these lands. In summary, Articles 14 to 17 and the conclusion highlights the most important aspects of peace and transition. They ensured that Spain's citizens retained certain rights, that trade and shipping remained active, that the temporary role of the U.S. in Cuba was defined, and that the treaty became legally valid. Together, these sections represent final steps that brought closure to the war and ensured a peaceful and orderly handover of power between Spain and the United States.